What the craziest thing a coworker did that got them fired? Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for the support. At a party, one guy, who was quite senior, went up to the CEO and casually commented, "I've noticed quite a few darkies joining lately." Dude did not see the end of the party. Next story. Cashier at a fast food place never gave a drive-thru customer their CC back. She went shopping that night at Walmart, but they have cameras. Oops, she got arrested and never saw her again. Next story. Owner drastically changed the commission schedule for the sales team, and the sales manager argued with the owner about it during a Zoom meeting with the entire leadership team. Owner fired him for not siding with him about the change. Sales team, about a dozen of them, all quit the following Monday. I guess it's not so crazy for this subreddit, but it was a wild thing to do at that toxic place. It caused a domino effect where earnings slumped for over a year, causing multiple layoffs. Glad I'm not there anymore. Super proud of all those guys for sticking together though. Even though I was one of those who got laid off later, my life is so much better now. Next story. Had a coworker keep calling this 42-year-old Hispanic man old geezer, and some things I am not comfortable posting. The 42-year-old got the 20-year-old to take a swing at him, and then dropped the young man like the sack of crap he was. Next story. A guy I used to be friends with, we'll call him Dave, had a cushy government job in central Pennsylvania in the early 2000s. It came with a pension, great benefits, and he was good at it. His coworkers liked him. The public liked him. Dave was not an attractive man, and he had recently gotten divorced. So Dave decided to go on adult friend finder chat rooms to look for women. He used his government laptop during work hours to do so. Things were fine until his internet kept shutting down whenever he would go on that website. He would reboot his machine, rinse, and repeat. Turns out it was a specific IT guy Dave knew, trying to get him to figure it out without confronting him. Dave did not figure it out and was let go 6 weeks later. Of course, Dave never put it together. He blamed the city for not knowing what they were doing and how much they would be screwed without him. The city was not screwed. He was replaced within a month. Dave was, though. He lost the 15 years he worked toward his retirement in a pissant town in central Pennsylvania. He couldn't leave the area because he had 2 daughters in middle school. Dave got a job pumping gas after that and still blamed the city until I finally figured things out based on his stories. I told him what probably happened. Dave didn't believe me. Dave reached out to an IT guy he knew who still worked for the city and told Dave that said IT guy kept temporarily revoking network access every time Dave went on Adult Friend Finder. After a month, the IT guy had to report it to his boss because Dave was stupid and created a work ticket for his consistent network loss, only while trolling for pussy in online chat rooms. IT guy was then worried he would lose his job if he didn't tell his boss about Dave's browsing behavior. Boss IT guy then spent 2 weeks documenting Dave's browsing without network interruption. He was fired with cause for breaking his employee contract. Dave blew up his life and future over an online chat room. Next story. Told everyone in the building that they were intentionally being poisoned through the water. Called the police about her purse being stolen, was in her own locker. Then did donuts in the parking lot until her car ran out of gas. Breakdown from hell. Next story. Kinda basic, but stealing chapstick. For some reason, she thought she could just use chapstick and put it back. She was a cashier, by the way, doing that at the register. I even warned her a week before she got fired that she could probably get fired for doing that. But nope, the lips were apparently just that chapped. Next story. He showed up late for work and drunk, so I got him a coffee and told him to take a break and sober up a little before he started his duties. He worked as the maintenance man on the graveyard shift, alone. I went back to closing the store, but he found me a few minutes later, paranoid I'd fire him. I calmed him down, and he returned to his coffee. A few minutes later, the alarm went off. I found him taking the trash out the back door, which was a no-no after closing. I got him to leave the garbage until morning, then sent him back to his coffee. He found me a few minutes later, even more paranoid I'd fire him, so he tried to jump me with a knife. I fired him as the cops took him away. Dude had gone to a wedding before work. Next story. Worked for an alarm security company, and one of the ladies' husbands started a guarding-only security company. The jobs did not overlap or compete on any level, and she liked his Facebook page where he advertised his company, and she was escorted out of the building by 2 of our armed response officers because of conflict of interest. She had been working there for 10 years and was a lovely, loyal person. We were all in shock. Next story. Construction superintendent was fired for pictures on his company phone of him with bricks of drugs, taken at the house the company rented for out-of-town superintendents. Next story. Not a coworker, but one of my apprentices, decided it was fine to steal money from donation pots. They hadn't realized that the cameras weren't just for show. Most disgusting HR case I've ever had to deal with as a manager. Who steals money from a charity? Next story. Many years ago, I ran a 7-Eleven very close to the police station in Falmouth, Massachusetts. I had an employee of the night shift who would light incense on the little ledge on the floor in front of where the cashier stood and stand back there and smoke weed when nobody was in the store. He thought he was being pretty slick, but obviously everyone knew. I talked to him about it. He seemed cool. Then a couple of days later when I came in, he had bought, while on shift, a bunch, $462, of scratch tickets and scratched them, cashing the good ones, throwing away the others, and just left the trash filled with scratched scratch tickets. Yeah, I had to let him go. He was fine with it. He'd come in every couple of weeks and ask about getting his job back. He was still doing it after I had left. Next story. Called out sick with COVID and then walked into the store to hang out. This was just as the lockdowns were happening. Another coworker tried to claim workers' comp by deliberately placing their hand on a baking screen fresh from being used from the oven. Clear as day on the cameras. A coworker drove 80+ miles per hour making a delivery. There's no road that goes above 45 in our delivery area. Next story. My manager started working for an insurance company while still working at my company. He had influence at my company for decision-making, including insurance companies. He convinced the owner of my company we needed to switch up our insurance. When the paperwork came in to sign the deal, the owner noticed said manager's name in the documents. Turned out my manager was going to get commission for the deal and quit my company after the papers were signed. He got fired from both companies, and we went with a different insurance company altogether. Next story. I worked with a bloke who spray painted a massive swastika as a joke while the two of us were working a late shift. I told him he should probably get rid of it, and he didn't. Morning shift saw it and obviously reported it. All this while our site manager was on holiday in Poland. Next story. Not crazy, but I had a coworker get fired for too many call-outs. He was taking his mother to chemo, had notes from her doctors to confirm his presence, and was per diem anyway, and called with advance notice when he knew he had to. The final one was an emergency vet visit with his cat. The turnover rate here is insane because HR makes that decision based on lateness before my boss can decide about work ethic. Next story. This person was a former coworker and had gone to another job. Heard this person got fired for watching adult film on company computer. The company was monitoring what their employees were doing and had told the employees they were monitoring their computers. But this person watched the adult film on the company computer anyway. Next story. I'll go ahead and use his real name, Michael Jordan. We were both about 20 in college, working as cashiers as Lowe's Home Improvement, and Michael said, "My dad said I can't quit. He won't pay for school anymore if I quit." But he didn't say anything about getting fired. Immediately he locked eyes with a wandering customer. "Hey, can I help you find something?" "Yeah, I just need a bag of mortar cement." "Oh, sure, that's down aisle 20. Can I help you pour it down your own asshole?" Escorted out 30 minutes later. Next story. Worked with a bloke in an automotive production line. Our job was to use orbital sanders to remove weld flash from the car bodies prior to paint. This bloke had a can of Red Bull on a table behind him and decides to Orby the can to see what would happen. The can exploded. Red Bull went up the walls and a piece of aluminum can hit the foreman. He was sacked on the spot. Next story. First day on the job, a temp found out our HR lady broke her leg and had painkillers. At first he joked that she should give him some. After she said no, he dropped the act and told her he'd be waiting in the parking lot for her after work. He was escorted out of the building by police within the hour. Next story. Disobeyed a supervisor and then wrote a multi-page letter explaining why women should not be in leadership roles and how no woman could have changed the tire he was asked to change. Left out the part I did most of the work, as he had little idea what he was doing. The icing on the cake was the account manager and HR manager were both women. I explained this to him, and his response was, "You are too young to know how the world really works." He was fired and tried to file harassment complaint using me as a witness. I enjoyed reciting for the person all the ways he was accommodated and/or given special treatment. Next story. One guy got fired for continually pleasure himself. He'd do it in the bathroom a few times a day and in his car on breaks. He couldn't stop himself, and management didn't really have much choice left. Next story. Was caught with 3 empty watch boxes in his locker. He'd wear the watches out the door, pass security, major retail store, and hide the boxes in his locker until he could dispose of them. Worked for the company over 20 years. Lost his co-contributory portion of his 401k, which was a few $100,000, over watches that were maybe $300 each. Next story. I worked at one of the big banks in a big operations center. About 10,000 employees in the one campus. One of my team members was selling drugs to other employees, and also outside of work to the general public. None of us on the team knew about it as far as I know, until he got arrested over a weekend and missed coming into work the following Monday. When the manager reached out to his emergency contact, we found out he was still locked up, as he had not yet made bail. I only found out the specific charges from a mutual acquaintance, who worked on one of the other teams near us, who also told me he had been selling to employees elsewhere in the building, even delivering it to their desks. So he technically got fired for no call, no show. But the balls to be the in-house dealer was impressive, I guess. Next story. Stealing a blow-up doll in an Amazon warehouse, and promptly using it in the warehouse bathroom. Wasn't around to witness it or meet them, but it was relayed to me by multiple HR reps. Next story. Half our kitchen staff was fired over the equivalent of a 12-pack of beer over the course of 6 months. When owners found out we had a tradition called a cooler beer, when someone is stressing out after an unfair work pile, usually a dishwasher or bus person, and we let them go into the walk-in cooler to drink a beer. Next story. Had a coworker who was employed at this business for 5 years, just straight up ask a new hire if her breasts were real. Didn't try to ask quietly or when nobody was around. He just walked up to her and asked it, as if one would ask how the weather was on the way in. Next story. Guy came into work on a Friday to get his check, and he was drunk. We worked second shift, so he had no intentions of working that day. He just got his check and was going to leave. Supervisor saw him and reported him to management that he was drunk. Management tried to take him upstairs, but he passed out on the steps and fell asleep. After they woke him up and got him into an office, he got pissed and threatened to kill the supervisor who turned him in. He was fired for workplace violence. If he hadn't threatened him, the company would have paid for treatment for his drinking. Next story. A consultant at my client showed up for the 8 a.m. meeting they were running, turned the projector on, plugged their laptop into the projector, opened up laptop. We all got to see what kind of adult film they were watching the night before. Open your laptop first, then plug in, turn on projector. Next story. I was an assistant manager at a home improvement store. One day I go to another store in the area and needed a new door. Went to talk to the worker, and he ended up being the supervisor for the department. He asked me if I needed help to install it. Mind you, he was talking about personally, not through the store's program. I just ignored it. Wasn't my mess. Fast forward like a year, and I get reassigned to his store, and he had no idea who I was. Well, I didn't forget. Long story short, he and one of the other managers were pocketing the installation fees for all kinds of stuff. I estimated over $200,000 in lost revenue. The regional VP, in charge of like 200 plus stores, came in personally to fire them and have the police arrest them. I got reassigned to another district out of fear of retaliation from other employees that could have been involved. Regional VP gave me some cushy assignments like training new managers, and I eventually moved on after realizing the only chance to move up would have been to move across the country. Plus, being a store manager before 30 was not common at all. Why did I make a big deal about it? Store bonuses and manager bonuses were directly tied to these types of upsells. I saw it as taking money away from the lower-paid cashiers who worked their butts off, the nighttime stocking folks, and other managers like me that wanted to have good performance and not be trapped in a low-performing store. Next story, a manager and his wife got caught trying to falsify prescriptions and got arrested. That alone would justify the firing, but it also caused the company to look deeper into his activities. Turns out that new truck of his was bought with the corporate card. He had put in paperwork to say that he was buying some equipment for the team, bought it instead. He somehow managed to authorize the purchase himself, despite not being much more than a team lead. Next story, a coworker stole Christmas presents for an employee party from a controlled area that had video camera monitoring. He denied he did it, even though he clearly did. He could have remained if he'd turned in the items, but he refused. He'd been with the company for close to 20 years. I'm not clear what his true motive was, but I remember when he was limping one day at work. He told me he'd stepped on his son's crack pipe in the same way the rest of us might have mentioned stepping on a Lego. Next story. Retirement home? We had to clean up the empty rooms to show potential newcomers. The sales department went to show an empty room to a couple and found a housekeeper on the bathroom floor sound asleep. Fired that day. Next story. Alcoholic drank a bunch of vanilla extract, steamed a bunch of shrimp, ate them all, left the mess all over the counter, and fell asleep overnight on a stack of pallets. Still think about it 20 years later. Next story. At my old job, there was a guy who had his own side business that directly competed with my employer. Big no-no, even if he was careful about it, but he was not. Apparently, he was doing work for clients that he had at my former employer, but doing it through his own business. I'm not sure exactly how long he was doing it, but apparently he was sloppy about it. He sent out at least one report to one of our clients using the company report templates, and didn't even change the company letterhead. That client told my former employer, and he got fired immediately. Next story. My friend got fired from Disney World. The ride we worked at had a control room where the person stationed in there wasn't allowed to take their eyes off the screen in case they needed to e-stop. The ride also gives out cards to each guest that enters the line with a description of what they will experience on the ride. My buddy had these cards all in a cart and rolled the cart into the control room. He yelled, "52 pickup!" and threw all the cards up in the air. The control room has a large glass pane so guests can see in. It was not only a huge safety violation, but it was juvenile and just a really bad look, so they fired him. He was later a groomsman in my wedding. I love that dude. Next story. Had a relationship with one of the seniors he was teaching. Once admin got wind, they walked him out. I had to cover his classes for the day. The rumor mill was working overtime that day. It got swept under the rug. That started my slow march to the door for a different career path. Next story. My former GM, when I was in college, cut 2 eye holes in a white bank deposit bag and walked out to the line claiming to be the grand wizard of Chili's. Next story. Cook got drunk on cheap vodka in the restroom, then came out of the restroom naked and attempted to go back to work in the kitchen. This was a government office building for the state of Missouri. Next story. In a heavily regulated industry, a manager at the VP level brought in a contract worker to actively work. Before they were vetted, passed the background check by the staffing agency, before they were onboarded in our system, before they had a badge, and were fingerprinted without being in our payroll system, so unable to track time or get paid. With the promise to do comp time once they were fully onboarded, had them get a temporary badge every day for 2 weeks, which requires them to be escorted literally everywhere beyond the badge scanner except for the bathroom. But the VP was remote in a different state, used their personal laptop to work on things that were shared via an external box share, rather than internal sharing mechanisms to circumvent all the non-compliance going on. They had someone with access who did not know the situation create the external box with settings that was essentially locked down so it wasn't fully open to the world, so that it was compliant to allow external access to things that would otherwise trigger DLP. The fallout when it was discovered. The contractor was immediately paid for their time, and then terminated and flagged not eligible for future hire. The sourcing partner was removed from our preferred list. We are preferred provider only, and flagged not eligible for future use. The firm knew the situation and allowed it to continue. The VP was terminated during a round of layoffs a week or so later, and I have heard but do not know for sure that they would have been let go anyway with severance and been left on the books through the end of the following month to allow for the bonus to be paid, which was done for all those in that round of layoffs. But this flagged them as for cause, and they didn't get any of that. Every contractor we had through that company is now either being replaced or we are using the material breach clause to allow the contractor to move to a different provider where possible to finish out their contract. All because they wanted to fast-track something that ultimately nobody wanted or needed in order to make themselves look good and deliver something for an SVP that was also let go during the same round of layoffs. Next story. Embezzling donuts. He ran a training center of ours, and we provided coffee and donuts to the students. He arranged a deal with a local hotel to provide the donuts for free, but still kept expensing them with fake receipts. It was about $80 per week at the time, mid-80s. He was probably making $50,000 per year. Next story. Stole approximately $10,000 income from a restaurant by taking the money and not booking the food. Took my boss forever to figure out why the inventory was never right. Next story, worked at a family restaurant. One of our servers didn't get fired for doing substances on her breaks during daytime shifts. She didn't even get fired for trying to sell pills to other employees who were very uninterested. She got fired because she started coming down during one shift at like 1 p.m. and started yelling at her customers that they had to buy pills from her because she wasn't going to be able to afford her rent otherwise. Her table of 60-year-olds at their book club meeting were not amused. Next story. We heard he went to the women's bathroom in the office by mistake. The ladies screamed and called the entire office floor there. This was Hong Kong in 2014. It was the guy's first day in office. He was there on a short assignment from India, also his first time abroad. Dude was fired from the client's office instantly, and also by his employer in India. Apparently, they didn't want to pay him if he didn't work for that client in Hong Kong. Next story. One of our admins got caught doing substances in her car at 10 a.m. in the parking lot. 40-year-old mother of 3. We were all completely shocked. We had no idea, and she certainly didn't look or act like an addict. I've been around people on coke. Hell, I've done it myself, and she hit it real well. Another time, not at my workplace, but the one right below us, hired a bookkeeper who turned out to have no idea what the heck she was doing. She messed up their books so badly, it took the owner a year to get everything sorted out. Another totally innocuous person who looked like she had her act together and knew what she was doing, but clearly not. Next story. I used to work for a place where the manager was a complete and total ass, and incompetent to boot. Every day he'd come up with some new idiotic idea about how we're all doing our jobs wrong, and how he will elevate the business and our output. These were all bad ideas, because on a fundamental level, he had no clue about the actual job he was supervising. Whenever we talked to upper management about it, they'd be concerned, but then he'd fluff them up with various tales about how wrong and incompetent we were instead. Well, turns out that upper management wasn't as stupid as we thought, because while I left that place, I did keep in contact with some coworkers, and they told me that the manager had been fired after the company conducted a background check on him, after 12 years of working there, and discovered he had lied about everything in his resume. All his past jobs, all his supposed credentials, degrees, training, all lies. He was a random nobody who had managed to lie his way up on nothing but fluff. Next story. McDonald's by the hospital. Mom had cancer, craving a sweet treat, so I bolt off to McDonald's. Order her treat, my burger, go to the window. Cashier and manager are speaking, but I can't hear seems serious. Window opens. Window, I say, thank you, and get a bunch of change to the face while cashier is yelling at manager. Just fire me then, manager goes. After what you just did to her, you are fired. I pull up to get my food. All the other employees are gathered at that window to get the tea. They're hyped up, excited, asking if she's fired. She's been terrorizing staff and customers alike for months. I say, yeah, seems like it. She just hit me with my own change. Then I started crying because my mom had cancer, and someone pelted me with change, which actually kinda hurt. Anyway, they refunded me, and a bunch of 19-year-olds comforted me through a drive-through window. My mom was too nauseated from treatment by the time I got back, which made me feel even worse. Next story. Call center setting. One of the agents who had completely checked out decided to start placing secret admirer letters on the desk of a middle-aged woman that was probably the most annoying person ever born, which apparently also upset her husband. The lady wigged out a little. Dude had no attraction. It was simply just to mess with the lady that drove us all nuts. He dragged it on for a couple weeks, and I'm not sure if someone told or they caught him on camera, but he got fired, and apparently laughed the whole time he was being escorted out. Next story. Dude walked up to our branch manager's personal administrative assistant with a framed photo of her that she didn't know he took. He legit said, I would have given you a shirt, but I thought that would be weird. Next story. I knew a guy who got fired for planking. Kotaku wrote an article about it. Then, the follow-up article where he was denied unemployment. To be fair, it was a pretty good plank, and he didn't like the job anyway. Next story. Got her substances out on the main desk in the office. Wasn't legal then. And was high and very amused trying to weigh her drugs on the machine that was used to count/weigh coins. Next story. Had a security guard mess up majorly all in one night. I was the manager for this event. First, she lied and said her brother was going to be picked up by another friend soon. leaving her the car. She needed the car for warmth while watching a business. No visitors allowed, but I believed her and allowed him to stay with her in the car until his ride arrived. Second, the brother didn't leave, and of course, wasn't really her brother. He was there all night. Third, they were having sex in the car while she's on the clock. Fourth, they were visible on the store cameras. Having sex. In the car. In a public place. The senior guard on site called me, woke me up, which I'd told her to do if any problems happened. Told me all that, and despite having like 3 hours of sleep, I got into uniform and went to remove the malfunctioning guard from site, took her place. When I arrived, the brother was in the passenger seat. Tried to slump down, thinking I wouldn't see him, but I already had. Plus he sat back up before they were out of sight. I emailed my chain of command, had the senior guard on site also write up her observations. Kitten was fired before noon. Next story, married father of 2 went to Vegas for the yearly conference. Hired an escort to attend the company dinner and brought her back to the hotel the company paid for. Not very subtle, not very bright. Next story. This was like 15 years ago. Happened to a coworker, let's just call him Bob, who was extremely immature. Bob was married to another coworker in different department. Bob liked to talk trash and other people weren't afraid to talk it right back at him. One day, it devolved into insulting each other's sizes. Bob decided to prove him wrong and pulled down his pants and exposed himself. In front of about a dozen people including customers. It only took about 2 minutes for management to be on the scene and bring Bob to the back room. He was fired immediately. His wife tried to defend him and got in a huge argument with management and got fired as well. Not only did they both get fired, but they got trespassed as well. When I said Bob was immature, just know that he was in his 40s. I've seen people get fired for some dumb stuff, but that one probably takes the cake for craziest reason. Next story. He showed up hammered to the company Christmas party. He won one of the prizes they were giving out, and when he was called up to get it, he put the regional manager in a headlock in front of everyone. When we went in the next day, his picture was already taken off the wall. Next story. My very first job at a daycare center in 1999. There were 2 classrooms. One day, their 2 teachers got into a fist fight in one of the classrooms in front of all of the children. Police called, both fired immediately. One was allowed to come back later because it was determined that she had only been defending herself. More recently, a couple were spotted having sex in a car, not at our workplace, but across the street. One was a manager, one was a cashier. Both fired. Next story. Coworker in our office abroad where smoking is illegal set up recording equipment in their office and got another coworker to confess they smoke and tried to turn it into the authorities. Next story. Worked in a call center. I saw fights. One woman took 50% of her clocked-in time on break. One girl laughed at a customer going through foreclosure. Some got fired for attaching insurance to accounts that didn't ask for it. Wild place. Next story. I have a pile of these. Here is one of my favorites. Husband and wife both at the same company. He is a database admin, she is an account manager. He has access to payroll data. The wife is asking him for salaries of people on her team. She's using the information to basically bully people. Not hard to figure out where she's getting the data from. They pull logs and yup, so they fire them both. But it's this crazy coordinated strike where they have to corral them both into different conference rooms at the same time so they can't try to warn each other. Kill access, then walk them out the door. My honorable mention is about a work function we attended at a sports bar. Contractor on our team gets hammered, tries hitting on a woman. Boss had to drive him home. In a tornado warning. Was not at work Monday. Next story. We drove trucks to our work sites. The crew lead would always drive, but one lead had just gotten out of jail for armed robbery. The company's insurance wouldn't cover him as a driver, so one of the crew members had to drive for him. He hated that and would drive anyways. He was caught and reprehended for it. That same day he decided to drive again. While driving, he pocket-dialed his boss and left a voicemail recording. He was going off on his boss, but also the owner and the owner's family. Specifically the owner's grandchildren who have mental disabilities. He never realized he pocket-dialed his boss until he got a call from his boss. Fired immediately. Next story. Guy had been applying to in-company jobs. He applied for a really good job in a different department in a different country that was honestly a bit too high for him. He had also applied for and gotten a supervisor job. He had the supervisor job for a week before he flipped out in a meeting with his boss and his boss's boss that he hadn't gotten the other job he was unqualified for. He was fired for it. Next story. I was working in a call center with a zero-tolerance drug policy. She showed up stinking of substances, so high she was not able to sit steady in a chair or talk and keep up with a conversation, in a job that is entirely conversations. It was a stressful workplace. The majority of us were abusing some kind of substance, prescription or otherwise, to get through a week, but not during work hours. Next story. I worked in a healthcare NOC for longer than I should have, and we had an opening on night shift. This dude came in and got hired. He was in his 40s, had a ponytail, and seemed excitable. I raised the red flag of his resume having nothing over 18 months of tenure, ever. I was overruled. About a week into his shift, he goes over to the service desk and starts saying he doesn't know why we get paid to do such little work. It's amazing that we even have the jobs, etc. Night shift is a lot less busy than days, but during any outages, our response could literally save lives. My boss pulls the guy into his office the next day and tells him he can't be walking around talking like that because the next time he fights for our raises, they will bring this up and say, why would they give us anything? And he tells him that he needs to go through boxes that we have on the storage shelf that have floor stanchions in them so we can see how many of each part we need to make complete sets. The second he saw our boss leave on the security cameras, he blows up and goes on a rant about how he can't talk to him like that, treating him like a kid. This is BS. And then he starts throwing around the floor stanchion parts in the data center, around the multi-million-dollar equipment. His partner night shift person said he didn't know if he should say anything. I told him he absolutely needed to, and if he didn't, it would probably be found out from the data center cameras anyway. Those were rarely ever checked unless anything was awry. But I didn't want to pull the "I will if you don't" card yet. After he got fired, he blew up at our boss saying who knows what, yelling and screaming. Then, 4 to 6 months later, the guy sends an email to our boss that was profanity-laced, calling the boss all kinds of names, saying he ruined his life because he fired him immediately after he had just bought a brand new Xbox, a new car, I don't remember what else. Our boss called us into his office to show us because he didn't even remember who the guy was at first. Unless it's contract work, there's a pretty big reason people aren't around for 2 years at a time or more. Next story. In the early 90s, I worked for a big tech company that was a part of General Motors. Very businesslike. Not just suit and tie, but you couldn't go to the lunchroom without your suit coat on. Culture like IBM or the Navy. They had this 3-year corp training program they sent the software developers through, broken into 3 phases. After working in the training program for a year, phase 1, you would travel to Corp HQ, spend 12 weeks in class, living in a corp apartment, coding every day. This was phase 2. It was hardcore, and everyone was at least nervous about it, if not terrified of it. If you failed 2 assignments, you were fired. There was no going back to your old job. If you succeeded, all the other major tech companies wanted to hire you away, so Corp made you sign a $10,000 or something promissory note you had to pay if you quit within 3 years. Guy makes it all the way through phase 2 with near perfect scores. Graduates top of the class, so they assign him to be a class leader for the next class, which is a huge honor. About 1 in 30 people get the offer. He's really going places in the company. That night, at the official class graduation party attended by management, he tells a dirty joke, complete with pantomiming giving fellatio on his knees to an imaginary man. He was gone 24 hours later. Next story. About 20 years ago, a teenager at a place where I worked that had a snack bar with a soda fountain stole the large box of Coke syrup. Those things are heavy. If you know, you know. Also, they are completely useless without the machine. This was before SodaStream was a thing. I don't remember how much those were going for at the time. I think at least $50. The stupid thing is, there was actual food in the snack bar that he could have just stuck in his pocket, but he hauled this heavy thing out of the facility. I don't know if he ever returned it. He was rehired at the same place a few years later. Next story. In fact, I recall witnessing one of my own colleagues being let go on the spot for sending out an email that was meant for just one person, but was accidentally set for reply all, in which they offered their candid, expletive-laced assessment of their CEO's management style. Next story. When I was a teenager, I worked at Harvey's. Some a-hole was absolutely ripping into the poor girl at the cash register about something. She stopped him mid-sentence, said, "I don't get paid enough to put up with this," and walked out. Next story. 2 coworkers argued who could do the job faster, which ended up in an arm wrestle. One got his arm broken, so they were both fired. Funny thing is, one of them had the company name tattooed on him too. Next story. Gordon, the new finance director, turned up a couple of hours late to the Christmas party, chuntering like a racehorse, jittery as you like, but exuding a huge amount of confidence. Proceeded to tell anyone in earshot how he'd flown down the A3 in his XJS at 150 all the way, got from London to Portsmouth in under an hour. Okay, Gordon, couple of holes in that story. Laughed at him. I was a salesman 19, not at all impressed by anyone. He asked me why I was laughing, so I told him, "You're talking bollocks and charlight off your nut." This seemed to upset him quite a lot. He swung for me. It was slow and limp and missed. He was hassled away. About 10 minutes later or so, we hear a loud scream and a woman's voice and, "No, Gordon, get off! I am married!" He has cornered some poor women from customer service and attempted seduction. Gordon and the rest of us are unaware of a couple of relevant points. She is married. Husband is present. Husband is also about 6 feet 8 with a proportioned build. Husband is heard. Husband is on the way. Crosses a 30-foot room in about 3 strides. Picks Gordon up by the lapels of his Madeline suit, slams him through a table of volantes, mini sausage rolls, sandwiches, and other party foods. It must have been like a pasting table or something, because it folded down the middle in the most hilarious way. Basically fired all the party goods all over Gordon. He was helped up and escorted out and never seen or heard from again. Lasted, I think, perhaps a week, maybe 10 days. Endlessly entertaining nonetheless. Next story. I'm not 100% sure this counts, but he refused to do his job. I was the line lead at a fish processing plant, which he didn't know. The line lead usually does filleting, which I don't know how to do, so I was doing lifting and undercutting. Lift the fish out of the container onto the table, and cut along the stomach to make it easier to fillet. He was next to me cutting heads, and I'm not very fast at what I was doing, so I started falling behind, which was slowing down the line so he'd have nothing to do for stretches of time. I asked him to help me catch up when he runs out of fish to cut heads off of, and he laughed at me and told me, "I'll do my job and you do yours." So I told him if he's not going to work, then he can go get his things because he's fired. And the guy laughed in my face and started laughing to the other people on the line saying, "This guy thinks he's the boss in here. He thinks he can order us around." So I didn't say anything and went to the big boss at break, and she pulled him in and questioned us both. I told her he was fired and why, and he laughed the whole time until she told him I'm the line lead and I have the authority to fire temps. Since he was fired and refused to leave, the last 2 hours he worked were as an unpaid volunteer, so he would not be paid for those 2 hours. He was so mad, was walked out, punching holes in the walls and ripping down posters. All of it came out of his paycheck. So in the end, he probably made like $5 working there for 3 days. Next story. Coworker was running late and speeding. Cop flipped on their lights and tried to pull her over. In her words, she wasn't going to put up with that, and ran. Turned into a police chase, ending in the store parking lot. The person working at the time sees this on the security cameras and goes outside to see her being tackled by 3 cops. She shouted to him for help, and the cops shouted to him to go back inside. He went back inside. No idea what the hell she was thinking, but she made a lot of bad choices, like swapping out her work hoodie for one at Walmart for a 5-finger discount, instead of just asking management for a replacement since hers had a hole. Next story. Worked in a casino, had a supervisor follow an escort up to her hotel room and sleep with her while he was on duty. Cameras caught him going in her room, coming out 30 minutes later while adjusting his clothes. He was brought into the manager office and confronted about it. He denied it, started pulling the race card excuse until they told the supervisor that they had cameras in those hallways. The supervisor thought they only had cameras on the casino floor. He had a whole string of excuses that lasted an hour until management had enough and had security escort him off the property. Next story. Man, y'all, I forgot about the psycho that robbed us at gunpoint 3 days after getting fired. She was at work high off her ass on heroin, and after we fired her, she sent her boyfriend to come rob the manager when she was dropping off the deposit. I don't remember if they got anything or not, but that was the day before I started my key holder training, which meant I would be the AM and doing the deposits too. Procedure changed after that. Next story. One April Fool's Day, a woman made Swedish meatballs out of dog food, put 2 trays in the break room as free, and sent one tray home with a coworker for her and her husband. The coworker and her husband were both hospitalized because the dog food had stuff in it that interfered with some medications. Both of them almost died. Of the people who ate some in the break room, several got sick and several were okay. Next story, tried to steal over 15 pairs of shoes on their very last day. Concealed a bunch of items in a bag left behind the counter to look like a customer asked them to hold it while they shipped. Person clocked out, picked it up, and was never seen again. They also carried a gun while working the shoe sales floor and motioned towards it after walking out the store. Next story, HR lady having the great idea of having a company Christmas party at a plantation and a period-appropriate costume ball, being the only black employee dressed period-appropriate. Next story. I work for a smallish regional pizza chain. One of our managers was married to the owner's daughter. At Christmas with her entire family, he had too much to drink, then started laughing about how he spits in the food of our annoying customers. Fired and ended his marriage on his day off. Next story. A plant director, read the highest position in the place, got shit-faced at a company party and fought like 4 people. Something about his ex and her new guy. Lost his job. Really sad considering all he lost for something so stupid. Next story. It wasn't that the bar manager was sleeping with the bartender. Honestly, a lot of people were. It was because she allowed him to take nudes of her, which he then showed to a bunch of the regulars at the bar. Next story. Supervisor stole iPhone from lost property and sold them on eBay. How he figured he wouldn't be caught. Manager assaulted a thief who stole phones from company vehicles. Bus driver told managing director to get lost whilst he was lounging in the back of the bus when he was supposed to be loading passengers. He didn't know who she was. Driver caught having sex at the back of the bus with a vulnerable younger person. There was CCTV. Bus driver caught pleasure on the top deck of a bus by a homeowner looking out and recording from their bedroom window. Went viral. Bus driver caught and photographed being given a BJ at the side of the road. Went viral. Bus driver was probably a pedo. Had a warning about contacting a vulnerable person who was caught having sex with the driver mentioned above. When she moved back to the area after a few years, he made moves to reintroduce himself to her. She complained. Very happy to see the back of that creep. Bus driver had to be restrained by depot staff from fighting a car driver who followed him to confront him about poor driving. A string of complaints and incidents of poor driving. Bus driver definitely was a pedo. Caught by PC repair shop with CSAM. Arrested at work. Suspended. Sacked on conviction. Various idiots on mobile phones recorded at the wheel. Driver making offensive hand gestures on camera. Both national headlines. Bus driver soliciting subscribers to her OF account. At work. Bus driver starting his own competing bus service after signing an exclusive contract. Trainee bus driver admitting to driving a taxi. Staff manager working for another coach company whilst off sick. Next story. We were building a hospital. We weren't even allowed food or drinks in the actual building in case something spilled because much later on it could create mold, etc. We were working on the concrete slab, setting columns to pour concrete to hold up the next floor, and the porta-john hadn't been lifted up to that floor yet by the crane, so Buddy just pisses right on the concrete floor. His excuse was that it was raining and it would just wash away. Instantly gone. Walked off site. Next story. Coworker was an on-duty security guard at an apartment building. Instead of being present at the front desk or doing rounds throughout the building, after clocking in, he leaves during the shift to go pray at a local mosque for hours. He would say he personally know the bosses, who were Muslim, and they would understand. Well, eventually, after residents' complaints and from other security guards, the bosses found out and booted his ass. Next story. Taking and saving CCTV screenshots of women working out in the gym we were paid to monitor. After a night shift, he accidentally attached all of that shift's screenshots to the end of shift report that goes out to the client. Client lost it, and rightly so. Colleague was fired before his next shift. Company lost the contract within a few weeks. 10 people lost their job because of that pervert. Next story. My boss, board level of a multi-million-pound company, used her expense account to fly her family to the Olympics. After a low-key investigation, we discovered that she was actually a con artist. Her CV was entirely fictitious, and she had just got out of prison. If she hadn't used expenses to fly her family, she might never have been found out and still be on a high 6-figure salary. Next story. Blatant theft. I worked in the service deli at a Walmart. Like sliced meats and cheeses, but also fried foods and stuff. You were allowed to put together your own meal, but you were not allowed to press the print button on the scale for it. Like, you could dish it all up and put the number in the scale, but you had to have someone else press the print button so that they could make sure you're not stealing or serving yourself too much. We were lenient though, you know? There were a few meals that were not weighed, like a set number of chicken strips and a handful of potato wedges. If you were really hungry, then we'd let you give yourself a healthy handful of wedges. We'd let you pick the 2 biggest tenders, that sort of thing. So this guy dishes up his own meal and presses the print button. The sticker was for a 2-strip meal, but there was at least half a dozen trendies in there, and way more wedges than we'd serve for that size of meal. He knew we'd tell him to put those trendies back if he had someone else press print for that meal. I guess he didn't care. He was a shitty employee who was always disappearing. We jumped on the chance to tell management what he did. P.S. Even though he was a bad coworker, we still would have happily pressed the print button for him if he asked. So it's not like he did this because he couldn't get anyone to print the sticker for him. Next story. Many years ago, when I worked in a semiconductor fab in California, 2 guys would frequently volunteer to clean the gold evaporator, which deposited gold on back of the wafers. Even though the gold use and waste gold was logged and supposed to be locked deposited in a safe, the tracking was pretty loose, and they were pocketing waste gold. One guy's wife was taking it to Reno to sell it, but the gold buyer got suspicious since it was 99.99% pure gold and called the authorities. The FBI eventually showed up at work, since they crossed state lines, and walked the 2 of them out. Next story. At a corporate dinner in Vegas, he got roaring drunk, snatched the auction item, a real Elvis Las Vegas stage costume, put it on in the bathroom, came in while we were eating, and danced all through the room, and on tables, singing some Elvis song, I don't remember which one, and proceeded to rip the suit in multiple places while doing kung fu kicks and sliding around on the floor. I thought it was funny, but the company sure didn't. He was fired on the spot and forced to pay damages to the item. He certainly was the talk of the town that night. Next story. CEO drank too much on the Christmas party and invited a group of ladies back to his place for a hot tub party. Don't worry about bathing clothes. I don't plan on wearing any either. Owner sat at the same table. By the time we came to work the next morning, he was gone. Next story. She was only there for a few days, refused to pick up the phone. It was a front desk job. I guess she thought it was only going to be emails? After 5 days of telling her boss she wouldn't answer the phone, they let her go, because it was no half the job. Next story. Took a brand new employee with him to do a substances deal. Then took the drugs he just bought to his house and did them, on company time, with the new employee still sitting in the company vehicle, stunned. Next story. Checked out a laptop to take home for the weekend. Our work was all done on desktop computers, and then downloaded adult film, and then returned the computer like nothing. Next story. When I worked in the restaurant industry, we'd occasionally get people that would order multiple expensive items, and it would stand out. Everything ordered was not what would typically be chosen, or there would be way more ordered than usual. At the end of the meal, the guest would find something wrong and complain and make a scene in an attempt to get the whole thing comped. Anyway, one day a coworker wasn't in the best mood and we were slammed. We worked at a popular restaurant on the Las Vegas Strip, and the restaurant was constantly busy with a full lobby of people waiting for tables. My coworker got one of these tables that were suspicious, and they started the scam. The coworker realized it, but there's not much you can do. So towards the end of the meal, the guest started complaining and arguing with the server. He started arguing back out of frustration, and the guest started degrading him. Then he snapped and basically yelled, "Just pay your bill and get out of here." It was one of those moments where it seems like the music stops and it goes silent. It in a weird way felt relieving to hear them call the person out, but everyone knew he was getting fired, which he immediately was. Even though he lost his job, we all felt like we got it off our chest. Next story. I work at a company that does case coordination for people with disabilities. We get people funding from the state and help them get services. A person had a client that wanted a job. She said she got him a job with her husband's company cleaning businesses after hours. He was supposed to have a person working to support him. Instead, he was given a shovel and told to shovel a parking lot alone for 8 hours overnight. After the shift, he didn't want to do it again, and the company refused to pay him. The working for the caseworker's husband was iffy. The way he was treated and refusing to pay made it a legal issue. She also refused to cooperate in any attempts to deal with the situation. It really bugged me because I had changed positions and she took half my caseload. The person hurt wasn't one of mine, but I spent about a week introducing her and helping the transition, and she was fired like a month later. Next story. Bus driver, newly qualified, former horse racing jockey, went to the staff Christmas party, clearly under the influence of cocaine. So much so that the landlord of the venue advised he'd need to calm down or be ejected. Failed a Monday morning substances test. Immediately sacked. Well, failed probation. He was warned on application and passed a drug test. I recognized an obvious stoner who just started and warned him people would notice. Lasted a few weeks before he was caught. Next story. A kid who worked at the recruiting firm I was with out of college was huffing keyboard cleaner. I don't remember exactly, but for at least several days in a row, maybe a week or so, he would go into this back closet near the communal kitchen and walk out all wobbly and sideways. Me and my colleague were like, WTF is up with this guy? Then one day he was so high he fell and gashed his head. It was a scene. Didn't see him again after that. Next story. A coworker downloaded his wife's work profile and email because he thought she was cheating on him with someone in her office. He was quietly walked out after his wife reported him. He apparently confronted his wife about an email or file he found during his snooping. I was working in computers as a systems admin. Our team had access to everyone's profiles and such. Next story. Used the company credit card to book himself and his previously terminated girlfriend a vacation package to Comic-Con in San Diego, and then also ordered a ton of iPads and iPhone using the card. When he got arrested mid-trip, he made up a story about the company sending him to San Diego to scout locations for a new office. Didn't work. Next story. Over the few years he was there, he stole thousands out of the registers. Eventually my boss found out who did it, and coworker's dad had to pay him back. Of course, he was also fired after that. Next story. Drank excessively at a client Christmas party and collapsed. He was removed by paramedics and taken to hospital as it looked like it could be cardiac event. He was fired on Monday. Next story. The man who was supposed to be preventing the students vaping in the school toilets was posting TikToks of himself vaping in the toilets with the students in his first week. Next story. Had a guy walk by a meeting room that had a bunch of managers in it. Said, 1 grenade is all it would take. Someone overheard and reported it. He was escorted out. Next story. Worked a field service job. The company had a small fleet of diesel trucks. Employees were issued company charge cards for expenditures. Mostly they were used for fuel, diesel, purchases while on the road. A knucklehead used his company charge card to fill up the tank on his car. He might have even gotten away with it except for 3 things. 1. He filled his unleaded-only tank with diesel. 2. Instead of calling AAA or a mechanic, he called the shop foreman for help and explained what happened. 3. During his call with the foreman, he indicated the company was going to have to pay for the repairs on his vehicle, as it was somehow their fault. He admitted he stole resources and said he'd pay back the company for the diesel purchase, but he genuinely believed that the company should have had instructions on the card that there were different types of fuel and to make sure you're putting the correct fuel in your vehicle. Best I can figure, he didn't know diesel was a different type of fuel and thought it referred to the method of payment when purchasing it. Next story. They didn't get fired, but they posted a question about something work-related, using a work computer that was logged into the manager's Google account, so we could book appointments. Manager was at home and was trying to find something they'd been reading at work earlier and opened their reading history and saw the post. All hell broke loose. Everyone who used that computer at the desk was implicated. The only reason I think no one got fired was because there actually was something to the question posted to legal advice, and I think after we were disciplined for mixing work and social media, the manager decided to drop it. It was definitely a catalyst for me starting to look for a new job, because until that point, I had been aiming for a better position there, but after this incident, it felt like I was guilty by association, and I didn't think I had a chance anymore. Next story. The CEO's relatively new, like maybe 2 weeks in the job. Administrative assistant came in Monday morning, and when the CEO came in a bit later, he asked her, "How was your weekend?" As you do, just some Monday morning, "how you doing" kind of small talk. She said her weekend was good, that she and her husband had gone to a flea market and bought an antique rug or something. She said, "The guy wanted X number of dollars for it, but we jewed him down to $1 of dollars." This she said in a modern workplace to her boss, the CEO, who was Jewish. The poison for Cuzco. The poison chosen especially to kill Cuzco. Cuzco's poison. That poison? She was walked out probably 20 to 30 minutes later. I had never heard the bigoted phrase, and a coworker had to explain what it meant. Next story. Back in the 90s, our company had a mailroom, a switchboard room, and a guard gate. The switchboard lady was having an affair with the guard attendant, and they spent hours on the phone. They would just put each other on hold. Someone in our office knew, and they were sending her anonymous letters. It was crazy. The switchboard was also the backup for the mailroom. She got into a car accident with her own vehicle over lunch. Turned out she had been driving a company car with an expired license. Somehow, her not having a valid license got back to someone who mattered, and she was fired. It had been expired for 5 years or more. So much drama back in the day. Company I went to after that, the IT manager was pretending to be Susie B in some dating account and charging the fee to the company. Next story. The smartest guy on our encryption team lost it and threatened to beat out boss and his kids. His wife beat the daylights out of him over Christmas. He took time off because his face was all black and blue. Then he got drunk and called our boss saying he was going to end his life. Our boss called the cops to check on him, and that made the guy even more mental. He started calling our boss and threatened him and his family because he called the cops. Our boss got a restraining order against him. They hadn't fired him yet, so he started showing up in Teams meetings from home like nothing happened. Then they told security to call the cops if he showed up at the office. Then they finally fired him. Next story. I remember working a pizza place job, and one of my coworkers bragged to probably 3 of us, including me, about how he did real man prison time, even going lengths to show off his prison ID, I guess. I asked him what for, and turns out he had a bad trip on substances and ended up murder his mom, served 24 years. He got fired because one of the coworkers he bragged to had mentioned it in front of our boss. Later found out he had never mentioned a criminal history, let alone a horrific felony charge during his interview. But also, to be fair, our boss didn't ask about any of that during the interview either. Next story. A couple of managers were having an affair. There is a rule about clocking out if one leaves for lunch and employee cards are used. They would leave together and alternate who swiped their card to leave the gate, meaning each day only one would clock out while the other was still on the clock. One of the managers had a sister that worked there that hated her. She was complaining about it to another employee. That employee was actually an undercover investigator sent in to investigate an entirely different matter. The company didn't care about the affair, but they did care about the time theft. Next story. On a work messenger app, we had one channel for all staff, just to post links, videos, and memes. All SWF, of course. Someone posted a photo of a couch they were selling. It obviously looked used. Some sales guy replied, "This looks familiar," with a photo of the well-known casting couch. He got let go later in the day, and that channel was deleted. Some people are just stupid. Next story. He applied for 2 weeks leave only a few days out from the start of his vacation. It was denied, but he went anyway, posting a bunch of pics from his trip to Disney Paris to his public Facebook page. When confronted with the evidence, he submitted a badly edited doctor's letter saying that he was being treated in Australia at the time. Next story. A girl pushed the older female boss, she got fired. A male coworker held a teen worker by the neck against the wall. He got a slap on the wrist. Equality will never be a thing in the US. It was in food service this happened. High school / during plus after college job for 21 years. Next story. This absolute genius went out to his car that was parked right under a light and right under a camera and proceeded to snort copious amounts of cocaine during his 1-hour lunch. Security was just watching the whole time, and they just called the cops. He was arrested and fired. Next story. I had a coworker once get fired for looking at adult film full screen on his monitor regularly during the workday. He worked the front desk of a medical lab. It had to have been basically pathological at that point, right? Because how could he think he wouldn't get caught? Next story. Repeatedly hung up on 911 calls and didn't build them into the system, which we are required to do. Though he was allowed to resign without technically getting fired. Then got hired by agency and actually got fired for the same thing.